This is first session in season 2 of our calls. This is what the Red Book looks like inside. It is built on 5 previous journals where he recorded some kind of dreamlike but awake hallucinations or dream states or interactions with the content of his own imagination. And so those were written down in normal journals. And then he decided to transfer them into this huge leather-bound book and write them in this kind of traditional style, calligraphy. And he also had a bunch of sketches that where he tried to communicate through this visual language the content of those encounters, let's say, with his imagination. The way he described this process of interacting with this content was that he experienced it as an incessant stream of fantasies that had been released. He says, I stood helpless before an alien world. Everything in it seemed difficult and incomprehensible. Now, right before this deluge of fantasies and imagination kind of hit him, he had started a very interesting period of middle age. He was 39, of middle age, anxiety and depression. And the way he describes that period in his memoirs is that it kind of started without a clear cause. Like, his life was going great. He said, by that time, I had achieved everything any man in my position could have possibly wanted. So he had a very solid marriage. He had a fantastic career. He was quite well off. He had the recognition of his peers. He was publishing. He was teaching. He had a very good clientele in his private practice and so on. And then quite suddenly, he found himself trapped in a lot of intense anxiety and types of depression. And then these images and characters and this internal content started to somehow push to the surface of his consciousness. The Red Book is kind of the final version of his way of documenting this. He tried to then find the meaning in what he was experiencing in his fantasies. And he makes this very famous statement that all my works, all my creative activity has come from those initial fantasies and dreams which began in 1912. He clearly experienced it as a journey of finding meaning, and his whole work, as you probably know, was built on the fact that dreams and fantasy, they do have meaning. It wasn't just the way a lot of the Western world is looking at dreams in the context of Western culture, which is they're just a byproduct of just brain activity resetting itself at night or something. It doesn't have inherent meaning. It doesn't really matter how you engage with it or if you engage with it at all. And Jung believed that what's happening to you in dreams and in all forms of imagination has a type of reality to it. And he went as far as equating the reality of what appears to you in dreams and imagination to the reality you are perceiving through the senses when you consider yourself to be fully awake. Now, I want to read again. I read this in our call last time, but I want to read again just a few sentences to bring the texture and the flavor of his actual writing and his actual encounters with his imagination back to the forefront of your mind right now. On the night when I considered the essence of God, I became aware of an image. I lay in a dark depth. An old man stood before me. He looked like one of the old prophets. A black serpent lay at his feet. Some distance away, I saw a house with columns. A beautiful maiden steps out of the door. She walks uncertainly, and I see that she's blind. The old man waves to me, and I follow him to the house at the foot of the sheer wall of rock. The serpent creeps behind us. Darkness reigns inside the house. We are in a high wall with glittering walls. A bright stone the color of water lies in the background. As I look into its reflection, the images of Eve, the tree, and the serpent appear to me. After this, I catch sight of Odysseus and his journey on the high seas. Suddenly, a door opens on the right onto a garden full of bright sunshine. We step outside, and the old man says to me, "Do you know where you are?" I am a stranger here, and everything seems strange to me, anxious as in a dream. "Who are you?" "I am Elijah." And a dialogue continues. It's also important that I clarified that he's not really dreaming. So this is not in a state of unconsciousness. What he's describing here is also not an instance of lucid dreaming, although he was having those as well. It's more of a daydreaming kind of thing that he was doing. He developed the whole process during the years he was going through this. It's like his own system of daydreaming in a way, where he consciously lets these images and these characters somehow emerge into his consciousness, and then he has this process of somehow being able to place himself fully aware in such a state of presence and aliveness in that scene that he's able to have dialogues with these characters. This kind of flows. Like he doesn't have the impression, and he's not talking about it as if it's an act like a writer. It's an act of creation the way a writer would write a script, right? Where you're very much aware when you're writing a script that you are putting words in the mouth of those characters, that they come from you. That's not what he's experiencing here. He's aware that these characters and what they're saying are part of him. They're coming from inside him, but he's perceiving what they're saying as not coming from, not being intentionally decided in this shape and form by him. And here's another example. I awaken. The day reddens the east. A wonderful night in the distant depths of time lies behind me. In what faraway space was I? What did I dream? Of a white horse. It seems to me as if I had seen this white horse on the eastern sky over the rising sun. The horse spoke to me. What did it say? It said, "Hail him who is in darkness, since the day is over him." There were 4 white horses, each with golden wings. They led the carriage of a sun on which Helios stood with flaring mane. I stood down in the gorge, astonished and frightened. 1,000 black serpents crawled swiftly into their holes. Helios ascended, rolling upwards towards the wide paths of the sky. I knelt down, raised my hand suppliantly, and called, "Give us your light, your flame-curled, entwined, crucified, and revived. Give us your light, your light." This cry woke me. Didn't Ammonia say yesterday evening, "Do not forget to say your morning prayer when the sun rises"? I thought that perhaps he secretly worships the sun. You notice a lot of Christian influences, Greek mythology, and also a lot of Eastern Oriental influences. By the age of 39, Jung was exceptionally well read into all of these areas, and he even had access to books like The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is a Taoist Buddhist text that hadn't been widely published for the general public at the time. So he's not denying that all of these things are mixing up in his mind and they're coming from this body of knowledge and material he had accumulated in the previous years. However, that doesn't really change anything about the situation, which is that he's awake, he's not dreaming, and he's actually experiencing these things coming to him, and not him creating them in the traditional sense. When you read the Red Book, there are passages that describe these fantasy moments, like the two we've just read. And then there are other passages where he flows in a very interesting way from this more contemplative descriptions of some of the scenes and into interpretation, into saying things that starts to sound like interpretation, that you could feel a view about the world and about the nature of what is happening to him perspire through the text. So now we're gonna read 2 paragraphs where he's doing that. The God of words is cold and dead and shines from afar like the moon, mysteriously and inaccessibly. Let the word return to its creator, to man, and thus the word will be heightened in man. Man should be light, limits, measure. May he be your fruit for which you longingly reach. The darkness does not comprehend the word, but rather man. Indeed, it sizes him, since he himself is a piece of the darkness. Not from the word down to man, but from the word up to man. This is what the darkness comprehends. The darkness is your mother. She behooves reverence, since the mother is dangerous. She has power over you, since she gave birth to you. Honor the darkness as the light, and you will illuminate your darkness. Just very briefly, in my opinion, he's trying again and again and again to basically grasp this issue of this restlessness of the person and the meaning of all of this. And he's describing it as this running away from endlessness and darkness into being very human, into the human restlessness. And that needs words, and it needs to name things that can't be named, and it needs to comprehend things that can't be comprehended. When you read someone like Jung, actually when you read almost anyone, these writers never tell you when the exposition stops and when interpretation starts. It's on the contrary. They want to blend the two as much as possible. They want to make it as hard as possible for you to know where the line is, because that's how they're using the exposition as, okay, here's the facts, and then here's what the facts mean. But what's hidden in this way, in this way of communicating, which is again how actually we all do it, what's hidden is this very important aspect, which is when something happens, you have certain facts. And we can say, look, no one thinks Jung is lying. He actually had these experiences. So he actually had these kind of fantasies that felt like dreams, but were not dreams. He actually felt like he's seeing these characters and they're talking back to you, and he's not the one, putting the words in his mouth. So he actually had that experience. So we can take that as the fact. And that's what I'm calling the exposition. However, we need to position ourselves quite differently when it comes to actually believing how he's interpreting what he had experienced. That has to be, just clearly bracketed, full awareness in any discussion about where the line is drawn. Who is interpreting what and who is believing what and why. Now, I'm gonna talk briefly about my doodles with the required mention that my doodles are like a million light years away from anything Jung was drawing or experiencing. These are my 2 rules of doodling. So what do I call doodling? This is super important because just like Jung's experiences from the Red Book, my doodles are not prompted. And this is very, very important. So they are doodles, they are not drawings. If I compare what I experience when I sit down and I make some drawings and sketches for the game or for a project or for a client, and what I experience and the process I go through when I engage in this type of doodling, difference is just massive. So it's the brain is engaged with the drawing and with a piece of paper and with color pencils and whatnot in 2 fundamentally different ways. And this is what I want to explain, because it might not be obvious for someone just looking at my sketchbook. So these are my 2 rules for doodling. They have to be unprompted. And what I mean by this is simply you sit down in front of the piece of paper and you just make some marks. Every single thing I will show you was started by just making like this like rotation movement on your wrist, where you just pick up with the pencil and you just go like and you have some like quarter circle lines basically on the page. So they just start like that and you kind of keep going like that. And the second rule is that you may not consciously compose anything. And by that I mean you shall not let your intellect interfere with what is happening. You should resist any, oh, I'm going to make a dog now, or oh, that looks like whatever, I'm just going to go and make a landscape. However, at some point, this thing happens that I call the moment of recognition. Like at some point, because your mind is so... Because the human mind just can't help trying to get a story or something out of it. You can't resist it anymore, right? So you can go for a while being like, okay, I'm not gonna consciously decide anything or compose anything. I'm gonna let it. But at some point you give in. It's like at some point something that you can't control happens. And then this moment of recognition emerges where it's like, okay, that's clearly a dog, or like that's obviously like this kind of shape, or this, or if it's something just very abstract, it's like, okay, obviously my hand wants to make a circle on the left side of the page, so that's just what it is. Okay, so these are the 2 rules of doodling. And now these are the doodles I've been doing in the last few months, in like they're actually in chronological order since I've started, so you'll see like lots of stuff. Think that what you're seeing here are all examples where the moment of recognition happened, and then I always go a little further. Like once the moment of recognition happens, then your whole hand kind of keeps going towards it. So it keeps building it up towards something. And sometimes that happens quite early, actually. So in the case of the face on the lower right, it just started, like I said, with just some random movement of the hand with the pencil, but it very quickly emerged that, I don't know, that's just what my hand and my brain want to do, and it just this like face just kind of happened. And that's the case in all of this. There's no intention. There's no purpose. There's no, like I said, absolutely no attempt to control the style or the colors. Yeah, like stylistically, they're just all over the place because I'm not engaging in this process as like an artist that has a certain style, or these things need to have a certain kind of quality. They're clearly connected to like states of mind, and they're clearly connected to how that changes, but I wouldn't be able to verbalize actually exactly, there's no one-to-one relationship. What was very interesting is that in some of these very clear stories appeared. So just like the way he has these characters that show up and talk to him, weirdly well defined landscapes that maybe they might not be well defined for you, but they feel well defined for me, where well defined things are happening, and they're both foreign to me because I don't know, I've never seen them before, but they also feel kind of familiar. And there's like this weirdness where I have no idea what is happening in that landscape, but in the same time, I've known it forever. The thing that I want to highlight the most is what I said earlier, which is how different this process is from consciously working on a drawing, a painting, a client work, and so on, that has a creative nature of any kind. And the best way I can describe this difference is that it flows without any strain on my part. There's absolutely no intention, no effort, no pushing, no concentration, no focus, no nothing. The way I can describe it, it's kind of like when you are eating, you effortlessly know which food you like and which ones you don't. Some just taste good to you for absolutely no reason, just because you think the taste is good, and some taste less good for absolutely no reason. That's just because how you're made. But that you're accessing that knowledge and you experiencing the taste and making that judgment and just going with it and eating more from the thing that tastes better to you, it's exactly how this process feels. It's and this is what I mean when I say it's effortless. It just happens. Like, you just know, like your hand just does things. It just knows what to do.